We do have another caller. Let's bring them in. Hello?
Can you hear me? Mic check. Hello, can you hear me?
Can hear you,
Hello.
yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. You know how awkward that'd have been if you couldn't hear me after all that time I was waiting? Oh, that'd be so terrible. How you
Sorry,
guys?
I don't. I actually can't see the studio, so I don't know how long you've been waiting.
No, no, you're good. You're good. You guys are good. I've I've been like down on Star Wars for a while, but you guys are bringing me back up slowly but surely, maybe.
Well, all right. So we got a new trilogy coming, but we don't know what it is, right?
Yeah.
Simon Kinberg, I mean the person whose rumor was reporting said that his sources said it's not 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
What would you want it to be?
Honestly, you know, Hamburg worries me. The first thing I thought about was when Disney acquired Star Wars. Um, and you know, I'm a film guy, so like I thought about Disney, the studio, etc. But when I saw that Disney was able to kill it with with Avengers, I figured, okay, Star Wars Avengers, I'm fine with. It won't be the OG trilogy. Maybe it won't have like the heart of the sequel, but I'm fine with that. And instead, salute to Disney for giving it a shot. But it seems like they they gave directors an opportunity to make their mark, but there wasn't any congruency. Like you have to have someone along the lines, and I assumed it would be JJ. You have to have someone along the lines to plot the track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that didn't happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and so that's why I'm kind of asking if we are getting a new trilogy. What would you want it to be? Like ideally, what would get you more excited to be back in it?
You know, this won't happen, but I love a little Knights of the Old Republic. But if we didn't get that, I'd be interested in, I don't know, like something along the lines of a darker version of the the expanded universe. Maybe we don't get Ray right out the gate. Maybe we don't get the dark side or like the new Jedi Order right out the gate. But we get ushered into something that leads into the expanded universe. But I think if Disney's doing Star Wars, they're doing 200, $250 million as a budget, and they're going all out. And I think we need to be reintroduced to what that universe could look like. But I don't see that happening.
So, what would you like to see from the expanded universe if they were to go that direction?
Yeah.
You know, yeah, so like something that impressed me with, say, the Avengers, for instance, and even Oppenheimer, um, was the revamping of the heist film, and that's
Mm.
something that even the Avengers did. Where when I heard one of the Russo brothers say it, one of them I forget which
Time
one, he's like,
heist.
"Yeah, it's a time heist." Yeah, and I'm like, "Look, Star Wars could kill it for $1 billion with any genre flick. You could like fanfic wise. I made a fuck like a I don't want to curse. I don't know if you know that'll ruin the algorithm.
You're fine.
But
You're
like
fine in here.
I made a fucking like Star Wars horror flick about the Sith and the Jedi and then out of nowhere Anakin comes up, but it's good Anakin, and you're like, oh no, it's Vader. Like, why aren't we having fun with these genres when we have this IP? It's arguably the greatest IP of all film, and part of me wonders like, while I respect the fact that Disney wants to make something that's canonical. I don't know if that's how you say that word. We need to take
Canonical, close enough.
canonical. Yeah, we need to take chances. Like you have the opportunity to take chances. and I'm not seeing those
Yeah.
chances.
Uh, what one that comes to mind, and I think it was one of, if not, it was the second to last Legends book to even come out, and it was Star Wars Scoundrels. And
Right.
anyone who hasn't like checked it out, you should read this. It is a Timothy Zahn book, I believe. He did Scoundrels, and it's a heist book. It's a bunch of people. Lando's involved, and they're breaking into like this gangster, who's has deals with Black Sun, and they're trying to break into his vault and steal stuff. At the same time, the Empire is like auditing this place, so there's more scrutiny over stuff, and there's a lot specifically in the heist. I love heists. Like, I've watched all of the show Leverage like twice, just because I love heists so much. But you're right.
But
They could absolutely do something like that in Star Wars.
I mean, you guys remember 1313?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I have some friends that were working at that studio at the time.
You remember, because I mean, maybe this wasn't you guys, but I remember I got excited for 1313, and it got to a point where I remember my girlfriend at the time. She was like, "Look, shut the fuck up! Like, just okay. I'm gonna play the game too. I feel you." And the game didn't come out, and Rebels came out. All right, well, not Rebels. Outlaws came out, and it's like, okay, fine. But those are the chances that I'm talking about. I'm try hard on you guys' stream. I took notes, and I took notes. I'm not even gonna play it cool. Certain things that like I would like to talk about, and I feel like it's all gonna bleed back to Star Wars. Just
Okay.
yeah, let me land this
Yeah.
plane. So like, go for it.
I,
Warrior.
uh, I do feel bad about like I said, I have a close personal friend who worked for the studio while 1313 was being made, and oddly enough, it turns into a Boba Fett game. They did do some advanced stuff, and in the shuffle of things, technology just kind of moved past where they were and with the tools that they were using. But I
Yeah,
feel bad because towards the end, I'm not gonna lie, that Star Wars, pre-sale, jerked around a couple studios to the point that the studio shut down.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. No,
We had the mall game that was
the Lucas
announced,
Art
and
emblem got
then
dead.
and that was done by the original team that did the Wii port for Star Wars on The Force Unleashed. But yeah, they were working on that mall game, but they have if you hear them talk about it, some funny stories about kind of being jerked around by George a little bit, where they like wouldn't hear any direction or anything like that for months, and then they get a call and be like, "Oh yeah, no, Maul's coming back to life, and he has a spider body," and they're like, "What? We have to put that in the game?" That's funny.
But,
I wonder
yeah,
if there
but
are more things like that they could potentially resurrect.
and as a side note, going into broader film and even like harkening back to Lucasfilm is Tim Miller with Deadpool. If Choco, if you're wondering why, what happened to that like personal feel of Deadpool? Tim Miller got fucked out of it. Is what happened to it. And don't get me wrong,
Yeah,
like
I
from
saw his
everything I've
interview on that podcast. It was kind of eye opening.
and don't get me wrong, like I'm a Tim Miller fan. Salute to Love and Robots, but like by all intents and purposes, Tim Miller, by industry standards, if you kick the tires just on the trades, he may be someone that's difficult to work with. But if you've kept up with like any drama on the Ryan Reynolds Blake Lively front, maybe they're difficult to work with too. So I think like difficult to work with. If you're talented, it's all warranted. It's all on the level. It's just about like what you're willing to abide by. If the film is good enough. And once Tim Miller got forced out, if you notice, slowly but surely, this Deadpool thing, while it's still charismatic, it's still clever and sarcastic. It's become a bit soulless, and that's the worry I get with Star Wars, where I haven't thought about Simon Kinberg outside of say Logan, and so when you guys were talking about him, I'm like, well, let me see what old boy's up to. And since then, it's been Murder on the Orient, Deadpool 2, Dark Phoenix, The New Mutants, The 355, A Haunting in Venice, Lift, and The Killer's Game. Respectfully, it's been ass, in my opinion. That's just respectfully. And
Okay,
I'm
well,
worried.
I'll respectfully say I liked Murder on Orient Express. But it goes back to what we were saying earlier. You write as much as he does, you're gonna have misses. You're gonna have hits and misses, and he has a lot of hits too. So if you want to focus on the ones that you think are ass, you should also consider the stuff that he has written that is also really good.
That's fair.
Specifically, I mean, he is credited for every episode of Star Wars Rebels, and I think that's the most relevant metric. And sure, yeah, the recent ones could be misses. It also depends on the actual role, though. Is he writing or producing, or at what level is his involvement? I don't know. That part I couldn't tell you, but if he is at least calling on some of the people that he worked with for all 71 episodes of Rebels, then I'm in. But it sounded like you had something specific that you wanted to talk about. You said you took notes.
Oh yeah, well, I took notes on literally if I read my notes, they would sound I don't like what's the best way to, scatterbrained. When you guys talked about Mystique, I wrote a note that said J-Law didn't have to like being Mystique. There were director problems. Angel was solid, but they should have chased that. Cut to Queer Angel, X-Men 2. Salute to Darwin, but adapt this was a great line. Deadpool Deadpool was okay. No, Deadpool okay, takes are lazy. Salute to Tim. The Spirit had one of the greatest trailers of all time. The problem is I'm blanking on his name, but the comic book creator directed it. Evil Dead Rise. Let me Google him actually. It was the same guy that made 300 and
Zack Snyder.
Oh,
Was this Zack Snyder?
Was that a Snyder film?
No, it was literally the comic book creator. Frank Miller. So the problem with the Spirit,
yeah, that's a
Frank Miller. Yeah, Frank Miller directed it, and he only got the option to direct it because 300 and Sin City did so well that, and I get it. If I was a director, I would do the same thing. Rodriguez and Snyder, they vouched for him, and he got 60 to 70 million to do it, and it was ass because he had no experience. And then I don't know if he ever directed anything after that. But The Spirit is a good comic if it was directed by someone that knew what they were doing and it wasn't the first opportunity. It would have been good. And I don't know. I still look back at that trailer and I'm like, damn, that could have been a good movie.
Yeah, we still have to remember that that the translation needs to be there, and that's one of the things I've appreciated. One of the reasons I have hope when it comes to Dave Filoni is he transitioned slowly to live action. You can't be like, you're good at comics, do live action, because they're different mediums. You know what I mean? That's taking a sculptor and then being like, play me a song. I don't
Some
know.
Yeah,
some
You do
no,
this
some
for
honestly, I
me.
skills
get it.
some skills have a level of transferability, but it's not a complete,
Yeah.
transfer or transplant. But as far as Simon Kinberg is concerned, the exclusive said that he was signed on to write and produce. We don't know any other information aside from that, but we do know that Kinberg has, as Choco has said, experience writing for Star Wars Rebels. He's written some really, really good movies, and he's had some really, really bad misses. But at the end of the day, we don't have any more information about that, so we don't know what's going on. What we can say is it's at least hopeful that there's more movies coming out for Star Wars. If that is the case, like it could be a Willow trilogy for all we care. Like you keep on saying that.
Yeah. Hey, if he
Yeah.
does like a Red Tails trilogy, I'm in. I'm in.
Oh no. I work because like when I look at Kinsberg, for instance, I'm not beyond reason. Like Damon Lindelof, I feel like got a bad deal where he he had some strong work that people like.
People
They
meddled.
have to, yeah, they
You know.
meddle with, dissect it, and it's one of those things where it's like, look, I I saw Watchmen, I actually loved it. I saw the leftovers post first season, second and third season were masterful. Mrs. Davis, fine. I look at Simon Kinsberg and I'm going to watch Murder on the Orient Express just off the strength of that recommendation. But when I look at everything else he's done outside of Rebels in the last 6 years, I don't know if it carries over off of the strength of his hand. So if it's his fingerprints across the project, I don't know if it delivers, and I don't know if that's the person you want ushering in the next saga of Star Wars. Star Wars of all things.
Well, there's one thing that we can at least provide in terms of comfort. I would say is that he's only the writer and producer. Right. It takes a village to make a film, let alone a trilogy, let alone start a saga, right? And we now have Filoni at the helm in terms of creative, being the creative officer who contributes to a lot of story development when it comes to all of the projects. So depending on where this new saga and this new trilogy lands, there's going to be a lot more hands on it, right?
Additionally, and because yeah, Star Wars has a story group. We also have Dave Filoni, at the top there. But the more recent films on his IMDb are him being the executive producer. Right. That's being the overall project overseer, not necessarily the writer.
Well, sometimes
So
EPs are there as financial investment too.
yeah, yeah. What I'm saying is that it's less of a creative role of for the outlook of the film than like a writer is. And so, while
Well,
I really had fun with Wolverine and Deadpool, right? Um, what are you doing? Sorry, my cat's being weird. Um, I wouldn't. I mean, I'd say if someone was like an EP on that movie, that'd be really good. I think if they were the writer, I'd be more concerned. Um, different roles.
I guess I look at it like if when I've seen the Star, and let me know if you guys think this was a good play that became a bad one that they rectified, or it was a bad one that they inevitably rectified. But when the Game of Thrones guys were given a Star Wars flick or two, I thought to myself, like, they've adapted things. Maybe not give them that. And then once they showed that they they couldn't deliver on a critically acclaimed scale, once they've gone past the adaptation, it seemed like the films they were given were pulled. But at the same time, the fact that they were given that opportunity, regardless of what Thrones is, because I mean, if you're working with Star Wars, that first hire needs to be the best hire. I don't know if I can't trust like Brad to deliver on a, because to me I just can't help but think every great creative wants to have a Star Wars movie. Even Christopher Nolan said no comment when he was like, you guys probably saw this interview where interviewers like, would you do a Star Wars movie? Everything he said no comment to was basically, I would, but no comment because I haven't been offered and we need to talk about contractuals. Every great creative wants to do a Star Wars movie. How do you not get the best creatives to make? Denis Villeneuve wanted to do a Star Wars movie, and he was denied. Like, how do you not get every great creative to do a Star Wars movie?
Well, as we know, in terms of the filmmaking process, it's not that simple. There are scheduling just conflicts. There are contractual conflicts. There's how much money are they asking for? Does their vision align with the overall grander narrative that they want to do? That's kind of the reason why some movies lose writers, and it has nothing to do with whether or not the outlook is negative, right? It's always just when someone departs based on creative differences, it's just that, right? It's creative differences, and that's not to say anything explicitly about the quality of the product that's coming out. I mean, it does rear its head sometimes when they go forward with the production and then have creative differences, and then bring on a different director to kind of like it's like the fan four stick again. But yeah, like if you have a whole bunch of directors that wants to do a Star Wars project, but they don't align with your vision, or they're asking for too much money,
or if they don't have a vision, or
they don't have the schedule.
If you guys say like align with the vision, hypothetically, I'm sitting beside like the kingmakers. What would be the best vision you guys would conjure for the Star Wars universe? And we'll say 3 films.
I could think of a number of them, but I wouldn't be able to tell you that's the best vision. So like we recently did a video about this during one of our reactions. We often talk about what we would like to see. What new movie we would like to see, what kind of show we would like to produce, and it all sounds great coming out of our mouths, but we can't proselytize a vision and therefore claim it to be the best thing. So, I mean, I think where my mind is right now is going into the Old Republic. But I don't know if that is their vision. I don't know if it's the best vision, but that's all we have to work off of, right?
Right.
That's why I don't come forward with, I read this script, that would have been the best movie. It's like, you don't know that because it's not a filmed movie. It's not edited. It's not sound designed. It's like there's no effects. You're just reading the words on the paper.
Well, like certain things, like, what was his name? Colin Trevorrow or Trevor?
Trevorrow.
Yeah, like even his Duel of the Fates. You read what he leaked or what someone alleged to be leaked. It's like, yeah, this is kind of ass. But I get them not wanting to give you like $300 million to make this. So good on them. But the fact that he was in the running before he fucked it off, and then, like, I'm a big fan of like Ryan Johnson, but it's just it's one of those things where I don't know if there's an overarching narrative that they're trying to deliver, but I do know that there's so much creative potential. We have to keep coming back. You can't. It's kind of like
there's always.
I like it.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's always a larger vision. There's always an overarching narrative. If we read
I mean,
the meeting notes, that is
in the
from
movie,
in general from Star Wars itself. Like, if we read the meeting notes that they had back in 2014 before Force Awakens came out, they had the entire story laid out of what they
I
wanted to do.
suppose I don't know if there are people. While there may be an overarching narrative in like the broad stream, if that's the case, I don't
Yeah,
know if
it's the
people are.
difference. It's the difference between the blood and legacy. Like, what is the inheritance and what's the legacy you leave behind? And that's the premise of every film in the sequel trilogy. I think there's another narrative that people kind of seem to forget, and it's having specific expectations from Star Wars because this is a franchise that we love, and so we can get in a situation where it may be very good, but it's not what we pictured for Star Wars, or maybe it's not what we imagined when we were growing up from it, and and that's one of the things I find most fascinating about the sequel trilogy is because it was written by fans of the original trilogy is what it really feels like, and so by doing so it corrects the perceived mistakes from the prequel trilogy. Now I get some people don't like the films, and oftentimes I find not liking a film makes the narrative harder to follow some of them, but like I don't know. There's just it's just a moving target, and there's really no way to know. If you look at Ryan Johnson's filmography, it's just fantastic, and he did make my favorite Star Wars film of all time, and it was widely financially successful and critically acclaimed. Um, or but giving and I'm trying to tie in all the topics here so we can
Like
so
the
we
Last
can
Jedi
kind
is
of
your
close
favorite?
out.
Okay.
Yes, Last Jedi is my favorite. Um, but then you can also have people like Rogue One, where it's created by people who aren't Star Wars fans. You know, I would hate to see a Christopher Nolan Star Wars movie because I don't think it would feel like, you know, like you can't have like a Wes Anderson Star Wars. Actually, that might kind of slap out a little bit, but
Well, I feel like Nolan takes a lot of IP and makes it Christopher Nolan.
Exactly. But then you also have people like the Russo brothers who didn't have a track record of doing things, and then we get the Avengers out. There's too many variables. I can show you a lot of highly acclaimed people from the film industry
I
that
get where you're coming from.
yeah.
Like my worry is this: like, for instance, people will, I don't know if you guys have seen like Godfather 1 and 2, and people will
Hmm.
see Godfather 1 and 2, and they'll shit on Godfather Part 3. And I look at it like, if you take Godfather Part 3 aside from like that trilogy, it's a fine gangster flick about like an aging gangster that's trying to get his family out of the business, who's trying to reconcile his past with his present and do right by his future. And the reason why people are like, oh, it's a shit movie, because you're comparing it to 1 and 2, which are masterpieces. Even when I look at, I mean, just in my opinion, and the beauty of film is that it's all subjective. It's art. When I look at 7, 8, and 9, it doesn't hold up the way 4, 5, and 6 do. But like even with the mistakes of 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3 didn't have 1, 2, and 3 to harken back to do better by in like studying the work and in executing a better story. So like when I look at 7, 8, and 9, I guess if you have 1 through 6 and 7, 8, and 9 are the best you can do, I question what's coming after that. But it's only because if they were to wipe the slate clean, and it's not like a Dragon Ball Z with Goku and Vegeta and Bulma, and if you're just doing something with wholly new characters and they happen to be Saiyans, that works. But if you're bringing back Goku and you're bringing back Vegeta and you're bringing back Bulma, it's like you need to do better off of the strength of the IP, just in my opinion.
And that's fine if you didn't like what they did. I personally think that the original trilogy characters shouldn't have been in there in the first place because people lost their their focus or missed the message because they only wanted to see Luke kicking ass,
Right, right.
which is just objectively not what it's about. But the
Yeah.
main question I have is what's next? Like
Well, I mean,
after having
Louis
the stuff
Rebels,
that you don't like, what comes after that? So because we have our criticisms of things that we don't like, and
yeah.
then we say I don't like how this was done. The next question is how would
Can
I
I ask
do
you
it?
guys?
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
can I ask you guys this question? Because I'm curious. Like, I don't know. I saw this from I saw these two ideas from game trailers of Star Wars, and I'm curious if the the Star Wars universe can hold up to this type of moral scrutiny. So on the one hand, I'm sure you guys saw this trailer. It was a Jedi and his Padawan. They were fighting with the Sith, and I think the Sith was like imparting like a message into the Padawan where it was like, remember they took you from your family, and your brother died because you weren't there to protect him, and your family was saddened by like you leaving. You guys know
Yeah,
what I'm
this is
talking about? You guys know that?
the most recent one from from the Old Republic online game. Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious if can the Star Wars universe like hold, because in my mind like the Star Wars universe is just simple. The Jedi are good, the Sith are bad, and if you play like if you operate in the gray and you go, well obviously the Jedi are a religious order, and in religious orders there may be like some reformation needed. Can the Star Wars universe actually hold up to that type of like moral scrutiny, or is it best to just keep it simple?
Um, I, I think largely how the original trilogy succeeded was because, well, so let me preface this. George Lucas always said that these films were for kids, so we were never going to deal with the nuances of moral good or moral bad.
For sure, yeah, yeah, 100%.
And so it was always evil emperor, that he's like the most
Yeah,
evil of everything. And so whatever George Lucas did was for the ease of comprehension for kids. They saw the red sabers, they saw emperor, and saw all bad. And what I think is happening now is an evolution of storytelling, because now it's not George Lucas, it's the fans that are the storytellers now. And I think what we're dealing with currently is the main issue with Star Wars fans is that we don't all agree. And that's a beautiful thing, right? We all have different favorites, we all have different least favorites, we all have different movies and shows we don't like. And so a lot of times you'll get this notion from people, it's like they should have actual fans making these projects, right? But these guys are fans. It's just you can't put
they're fans with a different take. Yeah,
yeah, you can't put 100 fans in one room and be like, all right, make this movie, and they're all gonna agree on it. It's just not a Star Wars fan. Everybody has a different Star Wars for them, whether they started from the originals or they started from the prequels. It's a different story for different people. So I think they can. I think they can thrive in dealing with the gray areas. I think Acolyte did a fantastic job of that, actually, because and like people's most basic criticisms of that when it came to the good and bad was having a problem with painting the Jedi as bad guys. But the Acolyte didn't paint the Jedi as bad guys. They painted Soul as having flaws and making a terrible mistake, right? And then the Jedi around him, namely Indara, was good. Like, she was trying to prevent that from happening. So I think Star Wars is getting a little bit more mature, and it expects the mature audience to be able to distinguish between good and bad, even if it's in the gray areas. You know what I mean?
Then this is kind of why I desperately need Star Wars to get back into the theater, because I think they should do a thing where they keep the simpler stories,
Mm-hmm.
the simpler black and white stories in the theaters, and you can keep those coming out, and then you can use our TV shows to do our Andors and things like that that get into more nuance and subtlety, because what we have kind of found is the more nuance and subtlety needed to discuss or shown on the screen, um, the more, I don't know, violent the reaction, the more troubled. I I don't know how to put it, but when Andor is the only Star Wars that's coming out, at a point in time, then the entire fan base feels like it was made for them, and if it doesn't appeal to this people, then they are mad, right? So if you can keep something that's going down the middle,
you gotta make Star Wars.
so
You
that
gotta
they
make
can
a Star
be,
Wars for everyone, basically.
yes, you got to keep them fed, you know.
like we always say, you can't make a Star Wars for everyone, but if they have a Star Wars for someone somewhere, then it doesn't become like it's trash. Like the whole thing is trash, right? Like you'll have a project for people who like heists. You'll have a project for people who love political intrigue and espionage, which was Andor, and then you have your like popcorn flicks that is just lightsabers going, and that's as simple as that.
Because like you described the cinematic, and all of those cinematic are great cinematics, but they're not stories.
I mean, but
and you can enjoy them, but people will act like, oh, this is better written than this or than that, and it's not even written. I mean, the one cinematic is a scene from the book Deceived, which is a good book, but if
off
that's the comparison, then yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. No, don't finish. I'm sorry.
Well, I just mean there's nothing written. That's like a scene.
I'll finish Choco's thought. Essentially, you can take the fight from episode 5 of The Acolyte, take it out of the story completely, show it to people that haven't seen The Acolyte, and they'd probably be like, that was an awesome fight. But like, there's no story behind it.
But like, my point is this: maybe we have too many Star Wars fans and not enough film fans, or not enough, like something that I'm thinking on
agree 100%.
Because like there was a I'm blanking on who said this to whom, but there was a writer director that told another writer director, "You are a great." No, I remember actually. It was Curtis Hanson who made L.A. Confidential and 8 Mile, and he was like the epitome of like a film bro. And the guy, James Elroy, whose novel he was adapting, L.A. Confidential, said, "You're a fine filmmaker, but you're a terrible storyteller." And it's one of those things where, off the top of my head, and I'm nowhere near the creative potential of these people that are producing, directing, writing, but you can have a Star Wars spy film with say Anakin or a handful of Jedi. You can have a Star Wars Western. I mean, hell, even Zack Snyder was percolating that before he made the films on Netflix he made that I won't even mention. And it's just one of those things where
we dodged a bullet.
Well, we dodged, and I can't help but think, these people that I'm critiquing thought the same thing more than likely before they gave a crack at it. But it just seems like it's the Star Wars universe is almost director proof. It's almost screenwriter proof. And sometimes I worry, the same way Zack Snyder was considered the geek messiah in the 2000s. And then people found out, which I loved Watchmen, and his Superman flicks were okay. But funny enough, he had never read Watchmen, and he had never read a Superman comic. And everyone gave him that geek messiah just off of the strength of the aesthetic that he could deliver. So I wonder if,
he has a god complex.
Yeah, but I wonder if like there are people that we're granting the arguably the greatest IP ever to that ain't actually fucking with it. Maybe they ain't the same way Zack Snyder wasn't. But there was a whole rollout
Tony
where
Gilroy wasn't.
oh, wait, say again?
Tony Gilroy.
Oh, Tony, yeah, and that's my worry because I can't. I want to live in a world where, like, Tarantino said, if you make a bad movie, it's because you don't like movies. That said, you could argue maybe Tarantino made a bad movie, but I want to think you can get there. Like you have a 20-point lead. I swear to God, you can't fuck up a Star Wars movie, but it's not universally acclaimed.
Yeah,
And I don't know.
and that reaches down into the core problem with Star Wars in general. It's because not everyone agrees in Star Wars. Everyone has a different Star Wars. I
Yeah.
keep on saying, and so you can
Yeah.
have a total hit in a hit in our point of view in the Last Jedi, but it's completely divisive. And that's not to say that the other group of people are wrong or invalid. It's just that that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the Last Jedi is critically acclaimed. If you look at the Rise of Skywalker, that's doing better on Rotten Tomatoes than Revenge of the Sith. Right? It's like at 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's my least favorite Star Wars film. It's so subjective that we really can't iron down anything. It's what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy about the franchise. I find some of the Star Wars fans are mostly a fan of the Clone Wars, and they judge all projects based off of how close that was to the Clone Wars. But we are going to head over to our comics conversation in just a moment. So, do you have any final thoughts? Any final things you want to say?
Yeah, I guess I started looking at the
And thanks for
comments
coming
before I
on.
go. No, hey, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys and what you're doing.
We love geeking
I,
out.
it's very, it's refreshing compared to everybody that will go, oh, I didn't like this thread in a Jedi's uniform, and this is why I hate Star Wars and where they're going. I appreciate the fact you guys are trying something.
No.
Yeah.
But on a side note, just
Fire in
to the
space.
Listen.
I also hate that people were like, "Oh yeah, why is there sound?" And it's a shut up. You don't want like nothing but silence in the Tie Fighter. Shut up.
Why does an X-wing bank like it has air in space? Like, it doesn't matter, all right?
Yeah,
This ain't that type of movie, kid.
That's why we call the carpet nuggets tourists, because it's financially lucrative to jump on a majorly popular IP and start spouting your
Start talking shit.
rageness.
Yeah. And before I go, I just want to say the people that are saying, I think this is VGC, but like Snyder, which it's sad to say, but Snyder was seen as a lightweight messiah because I was on those forums where people were like, he didn't know the fucking squid was the cause of the like apocalypse. He didn't know, and he didn't. I was on those forums. I was like 13 or 14, I forget, and people were talking shit about the fact that he had no idea that the Watchmen ended a certain kind of way. And neither did Warner Brothers, but they weren't supposed to know. He was. So I'll just end it at that, and hey, thank y'all for the time. All right.
Hey, thanks for calling in.
Hey,
Appreciate it.
yeah, thanks for calling, Brody.
Yeah, appreciate it.